Hi, my name is Jessica Wilson. Well, today I'm actually Luna Lovegood, and I'm going to talk to you about evolution. By watching this video, you will learn what evolution is and gain a deeper understanding of where you came from. So first, to explain what evolution is, it is changes that occur over a long period of time, and these changes are taking place biologically, so they're happening to our DNA. So what happens is we have DNA that replicates itself over and over and over again. It's a mirror image of itself. It doesn't always happen exactly like that, though. If we have DNA that replicates itself, however, it's not a 100% mirror image, we call that a genetic mutation. So, for instance, say that I have a genetic mutation that gives me really strong hands, and then I have offspring that keep that genetic mutation for strong hands. That is evolution. So now we have a series of people that have really strong hands, and we'll talk about in a little bit why that's important. So specifically, we're going to talk about the evolutions of Homo sapiens. There's two separate ideas for the origin of Homo sapiens. We have an idea for a single origin, which is out of Africa, and then we also have many origins, which is multi-regional. So basically, the idea is either that we came from one origin and just grew, and through time we've changed, or that we had multiple different species that were interbreeding together over the land, and that's kind of how we've shaped to the way we are today. Another origin theory is creationism, which is built on the basis of religion. However, from our basic understanding of science, we know that really isn't a feasible theory. The basic idea of human evolution is that we came from apes. Generally speaking, there are two distinctions when we're talking about human evolution. So we have bipedalism and hominins. Bipedalism is referencing basically apes on two legs. They were seen more as ape-like rather than human. Hominins are early Homo sapiens, so they're more categorized as humans. The beginning of this revolution journey for Homo sapiens began between 8 and 5 million years ago. We know this because modern scientists have studied both genetics in apes and humans, and they were able to compare them and calculate how long it would take to get from our starting point to where we are now. And they're actually able to do that through fossil discovery. So who's doing this? Paleoanthropologists. And so if we break that down, paleo, older, ancient, anthropologist, the study of humans. So essentially, paleoanthropologist is the study of ancient humans. So now they can do this by studying and collecting fossils. And these fossils can be found anywhere. A lot of times they're searching in deserts or in caves or at the bottom of the oceans, and it doesn't just have to be like a newly discovered place. It can be somewhere that people travel to all the time, but if you're not looking specifically for human fossils, you won't find it. Why do paleoanthropologists do this? So they have questions just like all scientists. We want to know, where did we come from? What makes us human? When did we start walking on two legs? How have our brains developed? When did we start wearing clothes? An interesting story, actually. We were able to study lice, and that's what kind of led us to the realization of when humans started wearing clothes. There are two different strands of lice. So one is just specifically for the human scalp, and the other feeds on the skin. But what we know about those is that the lice that feed on skin live in clothing. So being able to date back to when the first species of lice that feed on the body came about, we were able to say, hey, that must have been when humans started wearing clothes, because that's when this new species was able to then survive. Charles Darwin is a big contributor to human evolution, and he indirectly did it. So Charles Darwin didn't focus on human evolution because it was too controversial. So what he did is he talked about some ideas that like new species were able to come from existing species, and he also was really well known for the idea of natural selection. So what we talked about earlier, where, I have strong hands to be able to climb. So say that all of the food all of a sudden is in the top of the tree. Those humans that had strong hands would be able to climb up and get the food, while the species that didn't would die out. So the idea of natural selection is that the strong survive and the weak die out. So these genetic mutations, or the evolution that's happening, is allowing us to adapt to our surroundings and survive. Modern scientists are able to build off of this knowledge. They unlock new mysteries all the time while they're able to solve outstanding ones. Some of the things that they do is they focus on genes and how they change over time and how that directly affects the human body and the behaviors. They were actually able to figure out that 98% of genes in humans and chimpanzees are identical. The next thing I'm going to talk about are some of the stages that we went through to start from apes to Homo sapiens. So we went through a lot of stages, and I'm just going to give examples of some major changes that were taken along the way. Australopithecus, essentially the name means looks like apes. So during this stage, the distinction that we were able to get from apes is that they started having canine teeth, walking on two legs, and we know this because we found fossils that show an S-shaped spine, and we had a pelvic bone that was shorter. Another interesting thing is the brain was more positioned forward than in apes, and all this happened about 5 million years ago is when these changes started taking place. Based on the fossil records, we were able to tell that there's multiple species that lived during this time, and also that the size was 60 to 100 pounds and 3 to 5 feet tall. Homo habilis, the fossils date this to between 2.5 and 1.7 million years ago. These species are known for being bipedal, so walks on 2 feet, upright. Their forearms were big and developed, which indicates that they controlled tools. The brain size was larger. The jaw and tooth size matched current humans. There were still some leftover climbing traits, so that we could still see, we're still climbing around kind of like the apes did. This was the first species to have opposable thumbs. The next we have Homo ergaster, the working man. 1.8 million years ago to 1 million years ago is kind of when the species lived. They were 6 feet tall. They had a brain similar to the size that we have now. So these were known for being the first naked ape. So they started losing all of their hair and started having skin, and we can attribute this to also the sweat glands that we have, so we were able to start regulating our body temperatures more and start surviving in other climates. So this is kind of where we're thinking this is where clothing started. Homo erectus, so the upright man, happened 1.9 to 1.6 million years ago. They're very similar to Homo sapiens, modern human-like body proportions, so arms and legs kind of fit the torso. They were known to be 4'9" to 6'1", and by this time we had no remaining climbing traits left. And then we have Neanderthals. They had a larger brain than the Homo sapiens. It was a different shaped cranium, though, and it restricted the frontal lobe, which is attributed to higher learning. So basically, they had a cap on their thinking cap. They're culturally advanced. They used a lot of tools. They lived in caves and houses. Then the next is Homo sapiens, so overlapped with Neanderthals. Despite earlier theories, they're physically unrelated. We had higher foreheads, defined chins, and, we've mastered art and tools and started hunting, and the first to have a language. So what's next is we have unanswered questions. Who is our direct evolutionary ancestor? How much interbreeding occurred between our species and the Homo neanderthals? What is going to happen next is the biggest question that we have. So we know kind of a timeline of how we got to where we are, but we're always curious as to what's going to happen next.